Hello and welcome to Across Africa, our weekly show bringing you reports from across the continent. Today, as UN peacekeepers pull out of Liberia, we'll be looking at whether security forces there are ready to retake control. There are fears over press freedom in Zambia after authorities there moved to close down a critical newspaper. And meditating on ways to end gang violence, school children in South Africa are being taught techniques to help them cope with stress due to violence. First, a momentous day for Liberia. After 13 years, UN peacekeepers are pulling out, handing back control to the National Army and police. It's a big step. During Liberia's civil war in the 1990s, government security forces, as well as rebel groups, raped and murdered hundreds of thousands of people. Well, now big questions surround their readiness. Notably, do they have the resources to carry out the job?
Preparing to take responsibility for Liberia's security. These police officers are on a drill to demonstrate their readiness before the UN returns control of security to the country's military and police. It's a proud moment for this West African country, which has had UN peacekeepers since 2003.
The national security apparatus is ready to assume this great responsibility. Preparation in security, there will always be room for improvement. So yes, there are challenges, there are gaps that we still need to fill. And under our own national security policy, we continue to do that to strengthen our apparatus in the areas of logistics, the areas of training.
15,000 peacekeepers were sent to Liberia after two civil wars that killed hundreds of thousands of people. The wars became known for their use of child soldiers, recruited by warlord-turned-president Charles Taylor. The UN's job was to disarm fighters on both sides and train up a new police force and army. Many police are happy with their training, but say they need more resources.
The Liberian National Police need cars. We need communications, okay, and we need other logistical items like uniforms, okay. So in addition to training, we need logistics.
The UN's peacekeeping mission had a budget of $344 million a year. Liberia's draft budget for national security this year stands at almost a quarter of that figure. And with chronic underfunding come concerns about corruption and accountability. But despite the challenges ahead, it's finally time for Liberians to take back control.
Now to Zambia, where two newspaper editors were arrested a week after authorities shut down their publication, which was critical of the government. Tax officials in Zambia claim the Post owed them $6 million. But opponents say this is a crackdown on the media ahead of elections in August. And the newspaper's staff have vowed to continue their work from an unknown location. Mary Columbell has more.
Journalists at the Post continue to publish despite everything. Last week, the Zambian tax authority closed down this privately owned newspaper, accusing it of not paying its taxes. The journalists have denied this. For them, this is censorship.
I mean, for them not to want to listen and treat this as a pure business transaction clearly shows that there's politics involved.
The opposition has condemned these actions and accuses President Edward Lungu of trying to intimidate his opponents ahead of general elections.
It's corruption. It's to rig elections. The Post has been reporting these issues. So closing down the Post using state institutions is reminiscent. It's a sign of dictatorship, a brutal regime that is afraid of exiting from office because citizens are fed up with poor delivery.
Lungu has been in power for just over a year after winning a ballot triggered by the death of his predecessor. He faces a strong challenge from the opposition in the next poll. For Amnesty International, the Post's voice needs to be heard ahead of the upcoming elections.
This will reduce transparency of government actions. And I do think that the international community, the Zambian people, and all the observers are clearly seeing that the actions of government are only intended to pursue political capital rather than treat Zambians fairly.
The post-shutdown and recent arrests of journalists have led to rising tensions in the country ahead of the elections set for the 11th of August.
Next, a new way of trying to crack down on deadly gang violence in the Cape Flats area of South Africa, home to apartheid-era townships and one of the world's highest murder rates. Well, now children there are being taught to meditate to help them cope with the stress of violence in their neighbourhood. Take a look.
In, out, in.
Breathing exercises aren't your everyday school activity, but for children in the Cape Flats, they are a welcome escape. Meditation sessions are being held at this school in Bonteheuwel to help pupils alleviate the stress of living in a community rocked by gang violence.
My body just felt gone. I felt like I was in heaven, free from all of that danger in my street. It felt so peaceful.
But as children learn to meditate, a shooting breaks out on the streets outside. A 15-year-old boy is killed. It's a horrific reminder that Cape Town is the 20th most dangerous city in the world and that these youngsters are on the front line.
Most of them can't play outside anymore because of gangsterism and shooting in the area all the time.
Stretching your hands out.
In an effort to help these children deal with the violence around them, Global Peace Initiative I Meditate Africa is running yoga and meditation sessions in around 60 schools in the Western Cape.
I want to move away here, but my parents doesn't have enough money and I'm in the school, which is very nice.
There are an estimated 130 official gangs operating in Cape Flats, and with the violence on their doorsteps, young people face the risk of becoming involved in it themselves. But with efforts to remove children from the cycle of violence, there's a hope for peace in the generations to come.
Now, his novel, The Fisherman, was shortlisted for the renowned Man Booker Prize. Now, Nigerian author Chigozie Obioma is here in Paris as the book is being published in French. France 24's Nicolas Germain and Jean Barret caught up with him here in Paris and chatted to him about his path to becoming Nigeria's rising literary star.
Chigozie Obioma, the author of The Fisherman, is only 29. A few days ago, he was on the front page of France's most prestigious newspaper, Le Monde. His first novel has been translated into more than 20 languages.
If you come from a country like Nigeria and you say, I want to be a writer, when that happened to me, my parents were kind of afraid for me. Are you consigning yourself to this life of penury? So, but then finally I took that gamble and it seems to have worked out fine. So it is a relief that I have not wasted my, my life.
The Fisherman tells the story of how a tight-knit Nigerian family gradually came undone after one madman's prophecy. The New York Times says Obioma is the heir to Nigeria's greatest writer, Chinua Achebe, the author of Things Fall Apart, who died 3 years ago.
What he looked at was that he was trying to give an African narrative of what our civilization was like pre-colonial. You know, it was a response to Conrad's argument that the Africans had no culture. So what I'm trying to do in The Fisherman has been to, you know, now chart the course of, now that we have a country born out of Western civilization, how have we managed it? So it's like a continuation of where Things Fall Apart left off.
While in Paris, Chigozie Obioma tells us he's happy to travel the world to promote his book and meet readers. We ask him what his next novel will be about.
Someone said that, you know, your book is a little bit violent, even though it's about brothers and brotherly love. Why don't you write a cheerful story? So I'm taking them up on that and I'm writing a love story. So that's the much that I can give away right now.
In a few days, Chigozie Obioma will fly back to the US, where he's a university professor. But he tells us he misses Nigeria and will probably return one day to the land that inspires him.
And I'm afraid that's it for this week's Across Africa. Do stay tuned to France 24. Plenty more news coming up right now.